I got my work to pay for it. Yeah.
I would like to call to order the October 2nd, 2023 Committee of the Whole Regular Board Meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to welcome everyone joining us in person this evening and those who are viewing remotely. The board held an executive session prior to this meeting regarding legal matters, including OCR file number 03221143. Board members, with the agenda before you, are there any changes? I would now like to call on the board secretary for a roll call of board members.
Dr. Anderson. Here. Dr. Bader.
Here.
Ms. Brandt.
Here.
Dr. Buck.
Here.
Dr. Duffy.
Here.
Ms. Huff.
Here.
Mr. Leos.
Here.
Ms. Zidney.
Mr. Johnson will now provide us with his superintendent update.
Thank you. I would like to congratulations to the faculty and staff of Radio Park Elementary for being selected as the 2023 National Blue Ribbon School. Specifically, Radio Park was named an exemplary high-performance school for being among the best performers on state assessments or nationally named norm tests. Only 13 schools in Pennsylvania received the Blue Ribbon designation this year, and it's just the third time a State College area school district school has been recognized. The honorees for our 2023 National Blue Ribbon Schools Award have set a national example for what it means to raise the bar in education. U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona said in a statement, "Well done, Radio Park." So congratulations to Radio Park.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Unless other board members have any updates, Ms. Huff will provide a legislative update at our October 16th meeting. Okay. The COG report, I do not have anything. Peter, do you?
I do not.
Okay. And we will move on to public comment. At this time, we have public comment. Each individual will be allotted up to 3 minutes. For action items, public comment will be held just prior to voting on that item as required by the Sunshine Act. If additional time is necessary, the board may consider reopening public comment after board business is completed or during the next meeting. As a reminder, please, public comment is a chance for community members to share their thoughts with the board. It is not a time for the board to answer questions or engage in conversations. You can always email the board at all-board@scasd.org. Is there anyone in person who would like to make a public comment? Okay. Is there anyone joining remotely who would like to provide comments? Nobody? Okay. Then we will move on to information reports, facilities and grounds. I would like to call on Mr. Randy Brown and Mr. Mike Fisher to provide an update on the district-wide facilities master plan.
Thank you very much. This evening, there are multiple documents attached to your agenda. Sure. There are multiple documents attached to your agenda tonight. Among those are 2 memos with updates for the Memorial Field, Mount Nittany Elementary School project, as well as the district-wide facility master plan. We're very happy to have updates for you for both of those projects that we're undertaking. We expect to have updates for you related to both of those projects at every committee of the whole meeting over the next several months. Tonight, we also have Mr. Jeff Straub from Crabtree Rohrbaugh with us, and Danielle Yoder has joined us at the table to discuss the work that we've been doing to date. Much of the material, if not all of the information that's in the memos, is in the presentation. So I am going to go ahead and get started with that information and let Mr. Straub lead. As soon as I find the right screen. There we go. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's great to be back here at the board table. So this evening we're going to do an overview of where we are right now, both with Mount Nittany and the study. Really, we're really just getting up and running with both projects. Mount Nittany is a little bit further ahead with having another month related to that at this time. So just on the agenda, we'll talk about preliminary schedule, first steps, some schematic floor plans. Even though things are going to look very finalized with Mount Nittany as far as floor plan, there's still a lot of back and forth that's occurring, and there'll be a lot of evolution with the floor plans. I want to stress that. We're going to talk about some tasks that currently are occurring, and then what's going to be upcoming, and then also talk about engagement. We're going to have a brief transition. We're going to talk about what's occurring in the construction market right now, and then we're also going to then transition to the district-wide study for some discussions as well.
And if I could just add, excuse me, when we come to schematic floor plan development, you'll notice in the presentation, we have not included those floor plans that we are designing. That has been a request of our school resource officer. Local law enforcement has requested, although that was obviously a big factor in our last projects, including the high school and the 3 elementary schools. We will always have those materials available on display during the board meetings, but they will not be posted on our websites for security purposes. Mr. Straub has also confirmed that many districts that he's working with or are aware of are following this same practice. We would ask that anyone that is in attendance would not take photos or videos of those screens. And we have also asked CNET to not display those. If anyone in the community would like to have that information, they should contact my office here in Panorama Village.
And I would note, just because of the world that we live in today, that's become really common practice, unfortunately, in the last 5 years. I see that whether, we're down in Philadelphia, Maryland, whatever the market would be, unfortunately. So, okay. So jumping to preliminary schedule, and I think this sort of lays out a roadmap, has been presented to the board previously, and really probably the takeaway tonight, without getting into this component, we can have specific discussions if anybody has any questions, but really it sets out that roadmap of coming to the board on a regular basis for involvement, starting that not only the investigation of developing the schematic design, development, construction document process over roughly a 10 to 12 month period, but then also how do we engage public, how do we follow Department of Education guidelines, even though Department of Education PlanCon is on moratorium, really frankly has been on a moratorium for more years than we can all count. But we want to follow that guideline because, as an example, on both the elementary schools and the high school, because we followed that process, we were able to get in a very small window time period for all those projects. Not that that will necessarily open up for this project, but we want to have that opportunity if it would occur. Okay? So first steps. What we're spending a lot of time now is looking at existing conditions. we're meeting with both faculty, administration, on really confirming the program. There's been a lot of back and forth on that. Generally, we're talking about 6 classrooms, 3 small group instructions, the needs of special education, whether it be disability classrooms, autistic, what are the structure breakouts for those individual components, and then it has also been addressing both some storage requirements within the buildings. It's been addressing support programs, whether it be faculty, location, staffing, how to IEP breakouts, learning for students, and then also just some larger discussions of separating the gymnasium from the cafeteria components for that. We're inputting existing as-built conditions, even though the drawings that were created 12 years ago, things occurred during construction, validating that. Last week, geotechnical, so we were doing earth bores on site last week. And actually, I just got confirmation this afternoon. I haven't even had a chance to share that yet. Thursday and Friday, we'll be starting the site surveys with the civil engineer. So really getting all those core components moving that sometimes can slow a project up. Sometimes a survey or geotech can take 2 or 3 month process. So we immediately started engaging those groups. Okay, and then we'll be talking about some floor plan layouts this evening, as Mr. Brown mentioned. And this is the,
Guess what? I have the wrong ones. Hold on one second. Am I in the wrong? All right.
as Mr. Brown pulls that up, what you're going to see in the next floor plan is sort of an overlay of existing conditions with the building. And,
Keep going.
oh, no, that's great. Okay. Yes, okay.
Sorry about that. I
That's fine.
forgot to log into the right site.
So the first is going to be an overlay of the existing condition drawings. Building use changes not only from year to year, but even sometimes every few months. So one of the first things that we did was validating how the building's being utilized now. And just that's sometimes as simple as providing the floor plans to the school district or the building principal in this case, and having correct.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. So this was just some feedback that we received as far as how the building is being utilized now, whether it be where specific grades are occurring, pull-out spaces, special education, Title I, things of that nature. And we'll continue to evolve this as we go along. What we first want to know is understand how the building is being utilized currently, and then how do we start transitioning that into the implemented future design right now. We're showing an aerial. We also completed some aerial drone photography of the building and the site. And so this is the rear of the building. And really, this is the location that we're looking for the potential addition. I think there's been a lot of discussion to that, so maybe not large surprises, but so we've been really focusing on existing conditions at that location.
So I believe you can see with my cursor, this is the area where we expect the addition to connect. This side, we don't want to lose the athletic field surface. There was conversation about on the west side or the panorama side, could the addition come off of one or both of these wings? Those wings each all have classrooms at the end, so then there would be additional renovations. So this back portion of the building just really lends itself, and we don't lose we don't lose playing field, we don't lose playground to a large extent, because that's over on the west side as well.
So maybe while we're on that photo, so what you're going to see is essentially we're in the process of developing a third wing, a third one-story wing to the building, and then you'll also see the cafeteria component of the project. What we haven't developed yet, because really we're having initial conversations with the landscape and civil engineers, is how could we also potentially have a new drop-off loop on the side of the building with the size of the addition, and then how does that impact the fields that are out there currently? And it does appear that we can accommodate them, but that's going to be a challenge that we're going to work through. So, and then this is just a site plan that the geotechnical engineer was utilizing for their preliminary bores on the site. I would note that they kept those depths to, I think, roughly 18 feet just to meet requirements of center region.
Jeff, when you were
Yes.
talking about a drop-off loop, you're talking about a car drop-off loop? Because there's,
Yes.
Yeah.
With the size of the addition that we're looking, one of the discussions was the travel distance getting from the main
Yeah.
entrance back to the addition. And what you're going to see in the floor plan, the preliminary floor plan, I should say, because we're still early in the game, is that you're going to have two main public components. You're going to have, obviously, the current multipurpose, which will become the gym, and then you're going to have the cafeteria, and then you have that field access. It becomes a natural to potentially have a secondary entrance right there. It's not finalized yet, but we've been having strong conversations to that. Okay. So this is the current. So we've taken those that information that was provided us related to the current use of the building. We've implemented that, and now we're going to start merging that with the future utilization throughout the building. So I've mentioned some of these briefly, but 6 classrooms, core classrooms. The idea there is that the building can go 4 deep. And when I say 4 deep, 3 classrooms per grade. Not that every year there will be 4 classrooms per grade, but that the building has that potential. It'll address some of the concerns that are even affecting this building. Small group instruction, whether that allows for additional IEP, pull-out space, educationally for the students, Title I, whatever the need would be, autistic support classrooms, multiple disability, instructional or instrumental music classroom. We're looking very closely to what was done at Radio Park because this building with the addition will be comparable in size to Radio Park. That's been a lot of the discussion, whether we're talking about the cafeteria, whether we're talking about instrumental music. Those are components that we're tying across the buildings for consistency throughout the school district with your facilities. And then also looking at a creative instructional space in the main lobby that I spoke about between the 2 main public functions of the addition. And then a large discussion about support program space in the building, whether that is storage, mechanical, appropriately sized restrooms. One of the large concerns that we've heard is adequate storage within the building currently, to be addressing that. Okay. And then I think what this slide is and what you're seeing in blue are, we've even been having discussions in the past week since this PowerPoint was developed and provided to meet the timeline for the board meeting. We've received additional feedback back and forth with the administration. So we'll be accommodating some, for instance, restroom facilities, whether it's moving some kindergarten around in the front existing one-story wing of the building, an additional multi-disability classroom, and balancing that maybe with sensory. That's been some discussions that we've been having. The current, I think somebody made comment of how we incorporated the changes that occurred in the building last year. We have and understand how those sort of open collaborative areas were absorbed. We're looking at where would have been that space in the new addition would potentially be a STEM classroom. So there's a lot of just nuances that we're continuing to develop with the floor plan. So anticipate that you will see evolution moving forward with the floor plan.
So just to provide a deeper understanding, the conversations so far have been Mrs. Yoder, myself, Mr. Feldman, the principal, and Dr. Pringle from special education because of the special education focus of this edition. But Mr. Feldman will also be communicating and seeking input from his building staff as well in the very near future. And then there'll be a further round where Mr. Straub and the Crabtree team join up with the building staff to get some input. And some of these items that are on this slide here in blue are specific talking points that, although the four of us working with Mr. Straub and Mr. Fisher may have some ideas, we still want to allow for some opportunity for development and creativity and instructional need from the folks that are actually in the building already.
And
So-
Randy, will you guys invite then, like, the multidisciplinary classroom group over as well? Okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry, thank you.
Yeah, so there will be a continual back and forth with both the core administrative team, building staff related to the project, you as the board of directors hearing feedback, and going back and forth to develop the final floor plan, which roughly schematics is about a 3-month process. So the floor plan that you see up on, or really the key plan that you see up on the screen is just relating to that photo that you would the aerial drone imagery that you had saw before, and just giving you an order of magnitude of the size of the addition that we're looking at. Now, while that does look like it's doubling the size of the building, it is a large addition. Remember, that's a 1-story element versus the existing building is a combination of 1- and 2-story building. So you can see that really we are adding a third wing to the building, and then also we'll talk in a second with the floor plan for the special education sort of, I don't want to call it a wing, but we're sort of some of the special education needs have a stronger requirement for interaction between them that brings them together. Okay. And then this is the floor plan that you're seeing. So we're starting to merge how the building is used currently, along with that third wing with the six primary classrooms. One discussion we had last week was even how the plan's evolving, or actually this is almost stepping back to more generalize it at this early stages. We were showing where every grade was occurring throughout the building, where on this screen you'll see everything is designated as classrooms. We're still having some back and forth for that. So instead of showing where the grades are currently, we've sort of generalized that, and we'll be working that out with everybody moving forward. But with that, you see the 6 primary classrooms in blue. The orange is the small group instructions, and then the green is the autistic support, disabilities, and even in some discussions we had earlier this afternoon, some of those spaces are continuing to move around. Okay.
So again, it may look very different than a radio park, but because it has a little bit of a different layout. But in essence, it's very, very comparable in the end of the day to the size of Radio Park.
Correct. And the next slide is going to be, instead of focusing too much on that previous slide, this sort of zooms in specifically on that 1-story addition. So again, what I just spoke about, the classrooms, the small group instructions, special education, how is that distributed throughout the entire facility, not just at this one location, and cafeteria, kitchen. That kitchen area actually may be broken up between kitchen, receiving, all the components, and there'll be a large discussion over the coming months related to that. You also see the red arrow for, that's the potential entrance to the side of the building. And again, as I mentioned, that's still very much in this development. And really, we're calling that more of a entry, lobby, open collaborative area, because we really haven't fully developed what will occur in that space. There has been some references even to the other elementaries, whether Radio Park or Coral Street, that had been done previously. But instead of just pulling a design element from those buildings, having more of a sit down and finding out what's unique at Mount Nittany. Just like at Spring Creek, Radio Park, and Coral Street, very early on we talked about having an open collaborative stair or something like that, but all three buildings were completely different. Spring Creek didn't end up having one at all because after discussions that didn't feel appropriate at that building. We had one at Radio Park, and then we had quite a fair-sized one at Coral Street just because of how the building laid out. So we'll have that same discussion here and develop what's appropriate for Mount Nittany Elementary School, and then bring that forward to all of you for discussion. Okay? Yes.
I know this is really early design, so the autistic and multidisability classrooms are there, and I understand that clustering them together makes a lot of sense. But would this cafeteria use be way on the other end? I'm just thinking about like them adjacent to a high traffic region, but if the entrances to the cafeteria are closer to then the lobby, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I was understanding it correctly, because that's.
And you'll even see how the corridor sort of narrows down as you go into that sort of wing of the building, and then opens back up. And that was sort of a way of trying to control that.
And then is that an exit though on the back end?
There was talk about having a separate entrance for their needs. We really haven't fully discussed that yet. That was just a preliminary discussion. There's an opportunity to have a separate entry at that location.
For them to
and-
get in and out of the building and to get to the playground and that type of
Gotcha.
thing.
But good point. The question is, right now we have the entry to the cafeteria across from the restrooms as far as students moving. Do we make it more facing the lobby? Those are all kinds of discussions. Some of the discussions was even at some of the recent elementaries, the cafeteria was open to the main lobby. In this case, we're showing it enclosed. Those are all kinds of discussions that we'll have in coming months as we fully detail everything out.
I knew you would, but it just really stuck out to me, so I just wanted
No,
to ask that
I
I
appreciate
understood
having,
what
because
you're starting with.
sometimes we're really into the weeds here, and it's good to sort of zoom out and have that input, things that we might miss. Yes, Laura?
Just when you had talked earlier about the placement of the wing, it made a lot of sense. But then as I looked at the previous picture to this, I was wondering whether you had looked at, it seems to me with Radio Park the way it is now, and that being, there being an internal square that has, especially when we want kids to be outside and all, some real advantages. And I was wondering if that idea had been worked in instead of the third wing of doing a square there, and it
Yes.
just doesn't fit in the space.
We did very early on. We went through a number of
Iterations.
Sorry, thank you. We went through a number of iterations, and we did originally look at trying to connect the existing two classroom wings and making a loop system in the building. The problem was the nuances or how the existing building is laid out. We're going to have to potentially demo some classrooms on the end of the building, which didn't seem to make a lot of sense for the expenditure that had been made by the district just 12 years ago. The other component was it was going to essentially go into the play space currently utilized by the students. So that's why we started looking at the third addition to the building.
So as a follow-up to that, and I did appreciate your saying the thing about demoing it. Seems to me also we haven't even talked about how this will be constructed around the children, but this model seems easier to construct while there are kids in the building
Most
than making
definitely.
the loop. But at Spring Creek, there's now a playground. With the way we've been doing playgrounds, there's a playground between the two wings.
Correct.
At Spring Creek. And I'm wondering, even though you're not doing the playground design per se, if as you look at this, that is under the consideration, whatever the distance apart and all is that's working at Spring Creek for that, because I think we heard even with Spring Creek in the playgrounds, the desire to have more outdoor education space. So I'm just throwing that out there as you continue to look at distances and how that works.
Okay.
So we haven't really we can talk about that from a theoretical standpoint. We haven't talked to Crabtree about that. Mike and I have had those conversations along with Mrs. Yoder, and we would because of where the construction on this site is expected to be located, and because of where the playground is, we'd like to make it two separate projects at two different times. However, we will take those things into
Yeah,
consideration.
that's really what I was, not doing something that would then.
It would have been somebody's
Yeah.
next question, so I just thought I'd answer
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
Definitely.
This is still, so if there, are there any other questions, follow-up questions to this point? Because this is kind of like a segue into another conversation.
Well, actually, this still is on there.
Oh,
Let me
this-
just, at least one more slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. So these are just some next steps that we'll be delving in the coming months. And again, we're really just about a month into this process, so please, that floor plan's going to evolve substantially, just like the projects, whether the high school or the elementary schools did in the past. So we're confirming the schematic floor plan, the detailed surveys, which actually will begin this Thursday and Friday. Budget development, we have had discussions. I've heard some of the discussion at the board table on budget. I want to be a little cautious about bringing that fully forward, and we're going to talk about what's occurring in the market here in a minute. But the thought was, let's validate the full scale of the project and this program, which has been evolving over the last month, and then once, probably in the next month, as that's finalized, then we can fully evaluate the budget component. We've spoken about the site steps that are occurring. The engineering team is being engaged for the project. Actually, they have been engaged, and we're starting to talk about how will we expand the existing mechanical systems in the building currently, understanding that the building was a LEED Silver is a LEED Silver certified building. And with the board's direction, we will also be recertifying the entire building. So how do we do that? Those nuances of tying the existing building together with the new addition when we're adding such a large component to the project. So having those discussions and then evaluating, are there components of the building that we can address, with the building being 12 years old. And modernize some components, whether they're in your 5-year, your 10-year capital plan. Should we also be addressing those as part of the project? Okay. So, and then ultimately, once we have that floor plan resolved, not only bring it to you as the board of directors, but then how do we take that information also and expand that both throughout. The district, but then also how do you share that information with the community? Here it's more straightforward. I don't want to say straightforward, but to a point it is. We're developing this very specific program and then implementing that addition. It's a little bit different than the community engagement that we had for the elementary schools and the high school, obviously because we were sort of talking project, entire buildings scale for those projects. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So with the LEED certification, because it was done under version 3, and now we are in version 4.
And
for LEED
4.1.
4.1. Does the recertification happen under the new system, and will it require the prerequisites that are included in the new system?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about
Yeah, I
that?
can. Version 3 or version 2000, it was
2009,
2009, did sunset. That system does not, as far as U.S. Green Building Council, does not exist anymore. The building will be certified under version 4.1. When I say that nuance, we will register under version 4, but you have the ability to. There are two systems out there, 4 and 4.1 right now, and they actually give you the ability to take components from both. And we've been pretty successful in the last few years of really optimizing that, and we'll probably get into that in the future. But it does mean that we're going to have to look at prerequisiting components in the existing building. So
Right.
don't know those nuances yet. You know, the nice thing is the building is a geothermal system, which is going to help substantially with the project, but we're going to have to evaluate all those components.
Yeah.
So part of it, we're also in the process of reaching out to the U.S. Green Building Council and trying to get a little bit more data on the certification for the previous, or not the previous, the existing building.
Thank
So,
you.
Okay. So, yeah, this would be a good point if anybody has any specific questions to Mount Nittany before we transition to the next component. Okay. So now we're going to have a cost increase discussion. It's not a fun discussion. I think we all see this, whether, you know, we're going to the grocery store or you know, housing, the auto market, and nothing has, that's also occurred in the construction market. And we want to part of the reason we wanted to have that discussion with you this evening is it has been a dramatic increase in the construction market, and some people have asked, is it going to crater and come back down? What we're seeing is no. It's really what everybody's seeing is it was a market correction that the pandemic, unfortunately, allowed the market to finally address, and really the root of that cause was back in the 2000. Let's say the 2007, 2008 Great Recession. And after that, prices dropped and then they stagnated. And really what you're seeing, maybe the bottom left hand is a really strong image of that, is the market really stabilized and there was minimal cost increases over easily a 10-year period. And there was constant discussion that prices were eventually going to go up, but you know, I'm going to pick on roofing. There are three main roofing manufacturers nationally. They were all watching each other who was going to make the first step. And when the pandemic occurred, that was finally the trigger. What that has resulted in Spring Creek is probably a good example. Spring Creek was bid at the bids came in at $174 a square foot for the elementary school, new construction, so it's a very apples-to-apples comparison. We are now budgeting projects at roughly the $300 square foot in the state. We're still trying to come in lower than that, but that's what's being budgeted to be fiscally responsible. So, and that's what you're seeing in that spike in the bottom left is really that spike that has occurred now. That's from Department of Labor. That's all commodities, but you can see that dramatic increase that's occurred, and which has really been difficult for everybody to plan around moving forward. So you will see that built into the budgets coming forward to you. We have had those preliminary, Mr. Brown. But we will be building that in as we plan with you moving forward. Okay, and again, the goal was to try to be more cost effective. I would note that Spring Creek Elementary School was the most cost effective school in the state the year it was built. It even beat out the projects from the 3 previous years. So our goal is to beat what's occurring in the market. Okay. And with that,
Can I just ask,
Yes.
is that mostly, you said commodity, or is that labor cost too?
it's both.
Okay.
It moved back and forth between commodities and workforce over the last few years. Initially, it was more material based because when the pandemic started, really everybody was trying to maintain jobs, and then there really became a workforce demand that has even today. If anybody wants to be a mason, that's the job to be in right now, or start a masonry company, and that's what we're starting to see is people really stealing from one company to the other, and that's really driving up those labor costs for all of us. So whether it's in construction or probably even things that you're seeing throughout the district. So.
Anybody else before we move on? Okay, so, well, Jeff's not going anywhere. We're going to keep him here for the district-wide facility master plan discussion. And again, this is a very preliminary proposed design schedule, and there will be obviously ebbs and flows. We're trying to make as much progress as we can in the event that there are some delays beyond our control. But there's lots of conversations yet to be had here as well. So Jeff, I don't know if there's anything particular about this schedule that you wanted to talk about tonight?
Thanks, Danielle. Not really. I think maybe a little bit different than the elementary school. Again, we're a month further in the Mount Nittany discussion, so things are more developed. We're really just starting to get all the teams together for the district study. Everybody has been identified, but for instance, scheduling with the facilities department to do surveys throughout all the buildings. Those analysis starting, for instance, both looking at your 5-year, 10-year plans, frankly, just developing with your facilities department what would be the full criteria for those building evaluations and analysis and what format those will be put together, so that it's not just a document that's handed to you at the end of this process, but it's really a living document that can be evolved with the district moving forward. And then also, how do we start bringing that information to you and having that proof, just like Mount Nittany on a smaller scale with the addition, how do we proof that back and forth at different levels throughout the district? Phase 2 then will also be starting to develop the Park Forest middle school design component of the project, but and we're having very preliminary discussions on that right now, that it's not just Park Forest, but really that we're more having a discussion about secondary education as a whole throughout the district, and what does that mean? So there will be a lot more community outreach for that component, and that becomes is much more nebulous at this moment of how is that going to develop, and very similar to it was on the high school or the elementary schools, and that we all need to be flexible for that. Whether it's, and I'm going to pick on those two components of, there were many different, avenues that we evaluated on the high school, whether it was an existing building, an additions renovation project, whether it was a new construction. Then there were discussions when we thought, for instance, we thought the main focus was on the performing arts, and then very quickly it would transition to physical education. And all of us needed to be nimble for those discussions and listen to everybody at the district as well as the community and adjust accordingly. Also at the elementary schools, the whole discussion of Coral Street, that we're willing to take that input and then evolve things moving forward. So we're going to have that discussion of really sort of finding out and that information, and then how does that evolve into potential designs moving forward for the building. And then there's going to also be just some logistics of developing the actual educational program for the new middle school, and then can that be implemented in the existing facility, or will it be a new facility, and having that back and forth, and ultimately developing both options of ad reno or new construction, so that you can make an educated decision of what direction you can go, and then be able to present that to your constituents. So, okay. We are still, just as Mount Nittany Elementary School, we are going to be following the Department of Education standards, and for the lack of stating it again, just that if the moratorium would have an opening, that we could take advantage of that for the school district. We want to be able to do that. And again, on the elementary schools, I think it literally opened for 2 weeks in a 10-year period, and we were able to take advantage of that. So if that opportunity occurs, we want to jump on it. And it might mean coming to you and having a discussion. Can we have an impromptu board meeting and being able to jump on those opportunities for funding sources. Okay, the educational program that I mentioned, and facility conditions, and I sort of touched on a lot of this already for the components, but.
And
sort of-
if I could just
Yeah,
interrupt,
that's
but I just want to focus on the it's incorporation of our 5 to 10-year maintenance plan. Just these two, talking this afternoon as we were walking around Mount Nittany Elementary, and, oh, what about this, and what about that, and when's that, when is this rescheduled or scheduled for your maintenance? We're looking for those anomalies of scale, so that we can really take advantage, especially as we look at Mount Nittany L. Yes, it's a 14-year-old building, but some of those things, what is the benefit of doing some deferred maintenance now when there's people going to be already on site for a project versus waiting and doing it later? And so I really appreciated these two and their thought process and having those conversations. And, whenever I first came to the district, there was this plan, and there was a timeline of the various different buildings that would need to be attacked. And this time, I don't think that we're going to be looking at it in the same way. I think that we'll be looking at different components of buildings, and maybe those components will be replaced or attacked at multiple sites at the same time. As we've talked, Easterly Parkway, Grays Woods, and Park Forest E are very similar in age, and so they're going through some of the same water heater, generator, lighting, different things like that at the same time. So maybe we'll have that same thing. In a decade or so, we're going to have Coral Street, Spring Creek, and Radio Park going through the same types of things. As we attack Mount Nittany L, it may cause us to think, what about Ferguson Township? So it's a very different viewpoint for those of us that have been around for a while. But I think it's something that I want to share with you all, and so that you can share with constituents as they are asking questions and seeking to provide input about this process as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Jeff, is there anything else? You talked
I
already
think
about Park
I
Forest.
think we've hit on all these talking points. I think a lot of this slide was just making sure that if we hadn't touched on an item, we reminded us to address it moving forward.
So we are going to be presenting to you as the administration some ideas that we have for stakeholder engagement at the next meeting. That's our plan, not only to get a broad base, but also some of the specialty areas we expect to be using. Definitely CAC for finance, CAC for facilities, probably safe schools, as well as, Amy, what group did you mention earlier? Multiple disabilities work group, those types of things. And then also creating a steering committee for the district-wide facility master plan and how we can get stakeholders for that group as well. So we'll be working on that in the near future and hope to have that for you at the November meeting. Yes.
Peter?
Yeah, thank you very much. In any of the preliminary discussions, have you been talking about how we might be able to fully use funding through the Inflation Reduction Act?
We have not had those conversations
We have not
yet,
had
but
preliminary.
I'm sure that Jeff can help us become educated there.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential there in all
Yeah.
sorts of the building systems and vehicles and everything.
Mhm.
So even having that kind of, that sort of financing plan that can help us defray those costs, the earlier we know, I think the better off we'll be, and folks will be glad to know that we're looking for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the short of it is we will be having those discussions. Not quite there yet, but we'll make a note to
Great.
have those discussions.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on the master plan? Laurel?
Just a brief note, and you'd mentioned it in passing, and we talked earlier about it, but the CIC for facilities, which was so involved back when we did the elementary programs, its membership is way down. And it would be good to find a way for people to know that that's an opportunity that they'd have to participate.
So actually, I've been looking and several of our CAC memberships are look very different than they did a few years ago. I think the exception of that is finance. We've had quite a number of new members over the last several years. But we're looking to embark on a recruitment campaign throughout the district, and we'll be using different avenues to do that for all of our CACs. Thank you. Any other questions for this evening? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff.
Have a good evening.
And moving on, we have an update on the physical plant project, also with Mr. Brown and Mr. Fisher. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Just a quick update on the two major projects going on right now, the former North CTC renovations and the physical plant building. The former North CTC project is sort of right now full steam ahead. All of our prime contractors are working in conjunction currently. We've done a lot of floor cutting, testing, trenching, getting ready for, we're running conduits, we're pulling conductors, we're running piping, and right now we are on track for completion at around May of 2024 with occupancy in June. That's kind of where we're at, so we're still on track there. The physical plant building, we are currently still waiting on a building permit. Right now, we are waiting for the Urban Avenue easement, maintenance agreement to be completed. We're hoping that comes through any day, and right now, that's kind of what's holding us up. We've been through 3 rounds of review with code, addressed all of their comments, so they should have everything they need, other than this Urban Avenue maintenance agreement, which we need to get our sewer permit.
And Mike, we did what we needed to do on our end for
Yes,
that? So
yes.
are we just waiting on the borough?
We are waiting on the condominium association. The borough and the water authority have completed their.
So it's a business entity that's holding us up?
So we can't get a permit without the sewer permit. We can't get the sewer permit without the maintenance agreement. We were able to get land development through without it, so we have that. That's in place. We're ready to go. As soon as that comes through, we'll hopefully break
And
that.
there's no means to exert any pressure, like what, don't they have a certain period of time that they have to respond by within?
Condominium association.
Yeah, but, I mean, they can't make us wait like 6 months, can they?
They could. I mean, the agreement's written in such a manner that all the obligations are on the district, so hopefully they would see it that way and would go ahead and sign it, but we don't really have, other than the power of Randy's personality, that's.
Well, I guess I would say that anyone in town who knows people in the condominium association, please exert a little pressure so that, we can get this project done.
Will be. Yes, it is.
Do we know if there's a reason that
No.
we don't?
No, I'm not aware of any reason, no.
Okay.
Sometimes firms are just unresponsive.
I don't experience that often. Segue.
So that's really where we're at. Like I said, the CTC project is moving ahead, and we're on schedule, and we're waiting on a permit for the physical plant building. So. Questions?
Good question. What's the name of the condominium we're talking about?
Peppermill.
Peppermill, okay.
And that's been explained. So I'll carve out time daily to contact them.
I just thought it behooved the community to know why we were being held up and who was holding us up.
I think that was a reminder to get close to your microphone. So I think we're finished with this item. Thank you so much, Randy and Mike. And we now have our last facilities agreement update for the power purchase agreement. So Dr. Buck and I and Brandy will begin this conversation.
So I'll just start off by saying that the COG met last week, and the General Forum also agreed to additional legal costs. The attorney contacted me today and agreed to the $50,000 opt-out amount of $50,000 to complete the work. That understanding that if there are any unforeseen circumstances that we are not aware of, but based upon what he's expecting, that would be the not to exceed. We are, the attorney is working with our consultant on the direct energy documents, which are the documents for the distribution and providing of the energy, electricity to us. But sorry. Let's try this again. The attorney is working with the direct energy firm, and there has been progress on that front. We still are waiting for Prospect 14 to respond to the last round of comments that were provided. So we'll contact the consultant each and every day until we get more updates. So I make a lot of phone calls and send a lot of emails.
Prospect 14 is the developer?
Prospect 14 is the developer, sorry, I should have made that
No,
clear.
no, it's okay.
The Center County Recycling and Refuse Authority has announced that they are withdrawing from the project, but they are in for the entire legal costs until the project is, project documents are completed. Peter?
I would just like to add that the reason that the Center County Refuse and Recycling Authority has opted out is because they are working through the Get Solar program to provide their power with on-site solar because they have so much roof space available to them, and there's enough funding through the Inflation Reduction Act, et cetera, that they're able to do a really significant capital project on their own that the rate is competitive with the grid. They have that kind of physical plant that they're able to do it. So, you know, I think that's pretty exciting for them.
Right.
People were very congratulatory of them in the group, and
Right.
even if I was sad to see them go.
So beyond that, no, not really any additional information to share.
Okay, thanks, Randy. I would just add that it is nice to see the not-to-exceed amount and that that's been agreed to. That, I think, provides a lot of comfort for the continuance of the project, and now we will wait on Prospect 14. So,
I just want to
thank you so much.
I just want to acknowledge Randy's likely role in that, in terms of working in a relationship with the attorney's office to be able to accomplish that in a productive and a trusting way. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Oh, Deb.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions about where we go for our energy until this project gets done. I listened to the presentation at the COG that happened last week, and what they were telling their members was that the anticipation would be to hopefully sign the contract in December. But our current electricity contract ends in December. And I assume it takes some lead time. So I'm wondering, have we started to look for another stopgap? What is the process for that? What's our preferred length of time that we might, like last time we did a 6-month because we thought that would surely be enough. And it wasn't. So I'm wondering if maybe we need to do a longer time. Randy and his office spend a lot of time on this, and every time we have to do another stopgap electricity contract, it takes more time. So I might, not knowing that much about all this, I might recommend a longer time period to just, I don't know, provide a little bit of buffer for his office? That's a lot of questions, sorry, but.
I think I caught all your questions. I have not done anything yet. It is on the to-do, but if the board would like to provide some direction, or if they would like to have my opinion tonight or another night, I'm absolutely fine with either of those.
Peter?
Yeah, at the working group meeting that we had in here, John Franek, the executive administrator for the county, had suggested, and I don't remember who all said, well, that's a good idea, or at least look into it, would be to have Direct Energy provide a bid for a power contract that that then when the PPA shows up, the time to work with Direct Energy to do that switch later gets saved because we're already working with them, but we would want to make sure that we have a competitive rate. So whoever wants to, provide us with quotes, including Direct Energy, now I think that would probably be a pretty sensible way to go about it, because that transaction cost that we keep paying, that Randy keeps paying actually, it's like, there it is. If we can eliminate one later that's fiscally responsible now or relatively, then why not? Seems to me that would be a good way to go, but.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that is that, so all of the, and correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, all of the different entities have different deadlines for when they need to switch over. So this is really sort of it's going to be staggered, no matter what, even though right now the hang-up is Prospect 14. So this step has been planned for all along, that we need to do it again, but it's been part of the plan the entire time that whenever this one ends, if we're not ready yet, we need to extend it. And I know, Randy, you've had that, you've mentioned it many times.
We just thought that maybe it would be December.
We did, we did. So, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, I believe that now is obviously I agree with everything that everybody said, that we need to get new rates. Our consultant is supposed to be getting rates for us through Direct Energy, but I believe it's also in our best interest to get other rates, and so I was planning to do that, but I haven't done that yet. And we also know from Prospect that it's going to be a 12 to 18-month window at this point in time until solar will be ready. So to me, it sounds like a 12 to 18-month window would be appropriate to get the rates so that we can try to eliminate those transaction costs. And I expect that that's what our consultant is going to do as well. So that would provide us a comparison point of view, so.
Thank you.
Sure.
Laurel?
Thank you for working on the not-to-exceed amount. Do we have something comparable in a time it's going to take? Can they give us we'll be done by, barring unforeseen, obviously?
No, I mean, they're working on the Direct Energy while they have time, waiting for Prospect. And, I don't mean to bring up unfortunate circumstances, but we went for 3 months waiting for Prospect. They've only been silent for a little more than a week this time, but if I could predict the future, I wouldn't be working here. I'd be a millionaire, so or a billionaire. So I don't know when they're going to respond.
Okay.
And we'll see. But it's a very fair question. I just don't have an answer for you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Randy, for all your work on this. Okay, now we are moving on to culture, climate, and learning. So Ms. Christine Merritt will join us to present a proposal regarding the addition of an AP African American Studies course for the 2024-2025 school year.
Thank you. And I have Jessica James here, the Social Studies Coordinator, to assist with this tonight. We've been working for a while now to put together this proposal. As you may know, the College Board piloted the African American Studies course for 2 years. We saw a lot of development still happening within the course, especially coming off the pandemic, We had an African American Studies course on our books that was a college prep level class. So we made the decision to hold off until the pilot was completed so that we knew what we were asking our students to do. So they've completed that pilot. We have a much better sense now of that course, what it's going to entail, and the assessments that go with it. So we would like to make the proposal tonight to share with you the outline of the course and highlight a couple of things that are kind of unique about this course. So it follows the newer model for AP courses in that it has a project built into the course. So students spend about 10 class periods on a project of their choice that they select. So it's not a specific prompt that they have to answer. It's not something the teacher chooses. This course is an interdisciplinary course, which is also more unique to some of the other courses that incorporates all kinds of various disciplines within the course. It also has an assessment that goes with it, like the traditional AP assessment, like the other ones do as well. And both the project and the assessment is graded by the AP College Board, just like all of their other things. So in putting this together and speaking with teachers and students, they met with the Spirit Group last week to talk about this course proposal. And the Spirit Group was positive in thinking that a year-long class would allow students to engage in more depth and breadth into the topic. Right now, they currently have a semester course. And so because of that, we've traditionally offered one semester course in the fall and one in the spring. And so we're thinking with that current enrollment, to be able to support both courses might be a challenge. So we would like to consider collapsing the college prep class in favor of this class, which is again more interdisciplinary in nature and we feel is a pretty good accessible course for the majority of our students. So I think I've hit all the highlights. Would you like to say anything else about your involvement, your work? I know you've met with the department. You've looked a lot at the course outline. We also attached that for you to take a look at, as well as the entire framework, which is quite lengthy on the College Board website.
I kind of echo all of that I'm sorry, you at the mic, and to looking at just the different units that this course has, and like you mentioned, Chris, with the breadth of this course and how students get to have a choice in this project, and really they can do anything that this course covers, and the opportunity that this gives. Kids are excited, teachers are excited as well.
Thank you. Any questions? Deb?
Thanks. My only question or concern, and I mean, I would defer to you because you obviously spoke to the kids and you have the curriculum expertise, but it seems like we offer a lot of semester-long history courses in the 11th and 12th grade. And so I just worry that we're going to miss some kids that would really like to engage with the content, but don't have time for a whole year-long course in their schedule. I don't know if that's a big concern. But that's my only real thought in giving the one class over the other, if there was any way to still offer and to just see. I mean, I understand you don't want them to duke it out, but.
Well, there's a couple of considerations with that.
Yeah.
So we weighed that pretty heavily, and we talked about, is it worth offering, if we could offer one section, one semester.
Yeah.
And then that makes a teacher schedule have a ton of preps in it.
Right.
So you've got a teacher spread thin, you have kids, if they can get it that semester, that period. And so it's a tight schedule. We're not against trying, offering it and seeing what happens. The other complication for students is that if there are under 12 students and we can't staff the course, then we tend to drop it late in the process in the spring. And so they're kind of waiting, and then they have to schedule that's another semester course with what's left after everyone else has scheduled. So there's a number of considerations. I'm not saying it's a bad idea to keep it on there, but knowing all of those pieces and how they come together for students, we don't know. We really don't know. So we're not opposed to leaving it on the books, but our recommendation right now would be to, offer this course, which they don't have to take the test. And I think the project, even if they're not submitting it to AP, is a pretty good experience for students to have.
Oh, Peter.
Yeah, so I want to just second Deb's concern. So it's not just coming from her. I think that there could be students maybe who would be intimidated by the AP, right? Something in this and maybe not do it. Having heard what you just said, but perception can inform an action, right? The other thing is that really looking through the schedule and the standards, I just think it looks fascinating. I think it's a really compelling sequence. What was the thing in there that said a student could probably find a sentence in anything that they're working on and choose to do a project on it. And going through what you have, I mean, there's a lot of potential here for discovery, which I think is really important. I think especially perhaps for students whose ancestry may be from enslaved people, the potential for a real kind of family discovery is really there. And on the practice of freedom D2GO 6.9-12, right? Evaluate the impact of human settlement activities on the environmental and cultural characteristics of specific places and regions. I had the chance to evaluate a class that was proposed at the university that was only about that. And it was one of the most fascinating reads I have ever had. There was only a syllabus. So I just think, there's just a lot in here, and I'm glad that we're, that you've offered it to us to approve it for teaching.
Any other questions? Laurel.
So I'm going to third the concern about the, whether kids might be put off because of the year-long. But even more than that, the course specifically says 11th and 12th grade. And I would hope that as our semester-long course has been growing and developing into getting a reputation, that we'll be getting possibly some 9th and 10th graders who could take that course and then might still benefit from the AP course if we introduced it in a couple of years, or from one of our other AP courses. So to me, we also, I would think, 2 semester-long courses can serve twice as many students. And so that's really my concern. I agree that the curriculum looks fascinating and all of that, but in terms of educating our kids, and especially if we want to try to boost AP participation, having sort of feeder courses in the younger grades is, I would think, important to that, and perhaps gets a even broader spectrum of kids. And I'd rather have more kids get a taste and be excited than get the ones who are already excited, who might be the ones who would be more inclined to go after an AP course. So that's my big concern.
Amy.
Okay, so I'm going to be really positive. I'm not concerned that we're moving to a year-long class, because what I've heard from students at the school was that they were really disappointed it was only a year-long semester class, and they really wanted an in-depth class. They felt that they deserved, and our community should have, an African American Studies course that was rigorous and in-depth. I would say, because it has the AP label on it, as we know, some students get a little wigged out about that. I would hope that, I know you certainly will with your department be doing some professional development about what students should be encouraged and recommended to take this class. But due to the multidisciplinary nature, I hope that you'll also be talking with other, ELA and other areas, particularly, human geography is your department, but, other people, so that it's on their radar as well, that if they're seeing some kind of spark with a student in their classrooms, that they mention and encourage them that they will be capable of taking this course. So that would be the only thing I would suggest and request in terms of it being an AP course. But I think it's great that we're going to have a year-long course. think it's a fascinating approach. Afrofuturism is in there, which in the curriculum, which I saw was really cool. And I think as we go down the line, then there's opportunities to consider, do we need other, and I don't even know, maybe the semester course really isn't what we want to add. We may need a different kind of ethnic studies course or other piece. And the other thing I wanted to add is that I don't know that we shouldn't need a semester-long course because we've revamped our history and social studies curriculum, and we should be discussing so many of these topics threaded throughout our secondary years. So ideally, we don't need that. We should be already teaching it within the core. There was one more thing. That might have been it. But I think it's a really good opportunity. So thanks.
We do have a social justice course too, which has many of the same components. Not all, but some.
Okay, thank you so much.
Just.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see
No,
Jim.
this is not related to this at all. Just a reminder to people that they have, 3 weeks now to evaluate the physics IB book? Is that correct?
About that.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's coming at the next board meeting, actually, for
Yeah,
approval.
okay.
So maybe 2.
2 weeks. Okay. So get in there if you want to evaluate.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks. Thanks for the
Thank
plug.
you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, we now have time for additional public comment. Is there anyone in person who would like to make a public comment? Okay. Anyone remotely who would like to make a public comment? Okay, no. I think Peter wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, and thank you very much. So over the weekend, as many of you may know, in the CDT, the Center Daily Times sent an alert just before this meeting. One of our district's neighborhoods was targeted with anti-Semitic pamphlets. The materials were distributed along Nittany Avenue, where district families live, including Jewish families. I, personally, cannot see this action as separate from other acts of hatred in the last few years or months, whether those targeted minority students or faith communities in our district, or the fact that anti-minority rhetoric, harassment, violence, and recruitment have risen nationwide. While our board has not taken a vote on this particular matter, our policies do stand firmly against anti-Semitism, racism, and other forms of bigotry and hatred. And I celebrate our diversity and personally want to affirm our dedication to inclusion and belonging for all people, no matter their creed, their color, or culture. And as just one board member, I'm here to stand for love, for brotherhood and sisterhood in our beloved community, and I hope that others would do the same. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Peter. Next on the agenda, we have routine approvals. Is there a motion to approve the routine approval listing as presented on the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Laurel?
Just a note, on one of the minutes, I believe Mrs. Nwaki's first name is misspelled. It's Tami, and it says Tammy, if that could get fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any public comment? Any remote public comment? Sorry, I need to switch my screen here. No, I don't see any. Okay. We will now have a roll call vote.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney?
Okay, moving on to action items. Agenda item 8A is a motion to approve a settlement between the district and parents. There is no public attachment for this item. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any, well, should we do your comment first? Or? Oh, we approve, okay. Are there any questions or discussion? Okay. And is there any public comment in person? And I do not see any public comment remotely, so we will have a roll call vote.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney? Yes. Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson would like to make a few comments concerning this agreement.
Thank you, Gretchen. I would like to add that the district offers a sincere apology for mistakes related to the suspension of a student with disabilities during the 21-22 school term, and for any distress such mistakes might have caused the child and the family. Thanks.
Thank you. Agenda item 8B is a motion to approve a copier paper bid for the 2023-2024 academic year. This is shown in attachment 8B. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion?
It's a lot of paper.
Yeah, I always enjoy the paper bid. I don't know why.
Is there any public comment in person? Any public comment remotely? There is not. We will now have a roll call vote.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney? Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Agenda item 8C is a motion to approve a 5-year agreement with Penn State Communications for fitness center interns. This is shown in attachment 8C. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Deb?
I was wondering if someone could just explain what we expect the interns to be doing, because I have to be honest, I still just don't understand what this internship is supposed to be.
I'll do my best.
Thanks.
So normally, the fitness center has interns that are kinesiology majors. And I think that kind of goes without saying. Exercise is a large part of that, helping our students with the machines and whatnot. Diane Swager, our fitness center manager, has been working with a volunteer who is a communications major. And this individual was able to secure through his college and with Mrs. Swager's help a communications internship where he will work with her to understand how she communicates throughout the school to the students, and from a fitness lens, but works on communications and then also the management of that process and the facility.
Okay. But if I read the memo to us, which I guess is not exactly what we're approving, but what the memo says is the district's fitness center wishes to enter into a cooperative partnership with Penn State University for the purpose of providing hands-on emergency health services and fitness coaching experiences for undergraduate students enrolled in the university's communications program. So that, to me, doesn't sound like what you just said.
Maybe the memo could have been written a little bit differently, but we got some of this information today.
I hear you on that. And so I'll just quickly, while other people ask questions, peruse the agreement again. The agreement is for 5 years and could be more than one student, but it sounds like we're writing it for one student.
There's no expectation of an additional student.
Okay.
Yeah, the memo and the agreement were to be modeled after what we've already done.
Right.
And that came through. I think what happened, if I could be incorrect, but what I understand is that it sounds like Penn State College of Communications took the normal intern agreement and tried to modify and did not necessarily do that as clearly as could have been.
Okay.
Laurel?
In terms of Parliament, because I had the same question, so thank you for getting that clarification, but also the 5-year, is it within parliamentary order to do a friendly amendment to change it to a 1-year term? Because while I can see the kinesiology thing, I don't know that we'd necessarily have anything for communications to do for the next few years if they
Well, it would be
did want to-
different students, so whatever student does the work this year could potentially be doing the work in future years.
Randy, Keith usually sends these to me. I don't recall receiving this. But those that I do recall receiving typically give both parties the opportunity to terminate the agreement whenever they want to.
And that's in here.
So I don't think
whether
we
you
really.
approve it for 5 years or 1 year, you can still cancel it if you want to after 1 year.
Right.
And there's no cost to the district from everything
No
that's in here.
cost.
Dan?
And this is an undergraduate position. This is not a graduate position.
Correct.
Okay, I think we're done with discussion here. So is there any public comment in person? I don't see any. Any public comment remotely? No. Okay. We will have a roll call vote.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Vader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes. Okay, thank you, Randy. That concludes our agenda for this evening. Looking ahead to future meetings, we have October 16th, a regular board meeting, October 17th, a policy development committee meeting, and I would now like to call for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.